Hello, everybody. ODAT Nerd here, aka Terrence. This is the pre recorded video that is going to play at the start of every Devember video. So, what day is it? If you're watching this on the day that I recorded it, probably a day in December. What day? I don't know. I'm not creating 31 of these things. This is to tell you that we are working on the Devember project, which is a remote build system in Sublime Text. Now, down in the description, if I have done my job correctly, there should be a link to the playlist that has all of the videos in this series, which starts with the video that describes what the heck it is we're actually trying to build here. And this video will be a minimum of an hour long. I don't know how long it's going to go because I haven't recorded it yet. It's still November right now while I'm reading this to you out of my brain. It's not actually written down anywhere. I think that's probably easy to tell. I'm not very good at talking off the top of my head into a camera. So what are we going to be doing tonight? Don't know. Hopefully working on something really interesting, though. Probably should have thought that through a little bit more. In any case, we're going to go ahead and say the following. If you like these videos and you want to know when there's going to be more of them, subscribe to the channel, link in the description. If you're interested in videos that aren't live in nature, there's another channel I have that is going to be providing those. I have in the past and I will again. I'm just not right now because I'm doing this every day for December and it's taking up all my free time. Link to that is in the description. Like any videos that you find useful, comment on any videos if you have any questions, and most importantly, have a good time. So let's go ahead and give it to myself in the present, if you will, to continue on faceless because I don't have the sort of setup that allows me to stream my face while I'm working. Hello, everybody. ODAT Nerd here. Welcome to December the 15th, the second week of Devember. And let's get rolling on our changes for tonight. Now, may be said that due to the fact that it was Saturday and we did crazy things like going to not one but two malls here 10 days away from Christmas. Not that we were buying Christmas presents or anything like that, but this is a good time of year to buy, say, Christmas cards for next year and getting lunch from the food court, followed by doing other chores and going to a surprise birthday party for a friend. It was a surprise to her that it was a party. It wasn't a surprise to the people that attended. Didn't do a lot of stuff in a concrete fashion, but as is my wont on a Saturday morning, I did go for a 10-mile walk in which I rambled to myself excessively about what the next stages should be, and that has led us here. Now, if you will recall from last night, we have the ability to do this. Now, this is essentially, as we can see here, these arguments that are in my Devember project for Devember 2018, and we're passing it directly, which means it's using these instead of first taking it from the project that's open, then from the list of folders that's open, and then finally from um, wherever it gets things from there, the current file, I guess. There's a little bit of work that needs to be done here um, in order to finalize what we're doing. And as we can see, we have our include and exclude rules going. So when we execute this, we end up with an array of items that's rooted in this path. And we have excluded the obj directory and everything under it, the bin directory and everything under it, and the PyCache directory and everything under it. And we end up with this, which matches what is currently over here in the sidebar, although the order is somewhat different because this is actually putting folders to the top and showing folders, whereas this is showing all of the files. Then as it goes into each one of the directories, it puts them there, and it does not seem to iterate them in an orderly fashion, or it's the way we've done it. And this is good for what it is, but it's going to fall down in one key area that we're about to test because it wasn't something I tested last night, which is what happens if there's two folders attached to this thing instead of just one. And my goal in that case is that we want to handle both of those and transmit them, because we're going to assume that if you have configured to have a second folder shoved across, that you know something about how they relate to each other and are able to tweak those up in some fashion. So that's going to mean we're going to need some sort of path manipulations, and I'm not entirely sure how to do, but we'll come to that in just a moment. We want to make sure we handle two folders. There is one level of path manipulation that I know we want to do, which again we'll talk about in a moment. But what is the ultimate goal of this system? Well, if you remember, of course, we are building a remote build system. So the first step after that whole implementing network code and all of that business is, if you're going to build this and you're going to send files to the other side, you probably need to know what files to build. And so that is what we have built here, something that can collect these files. Now, we do need to transmit these files to the other side, which is, again, I'm going to say simple. It may not be simple technically speaking when it comes to keeping the sizes of our message blocks realistic, because we don't want to, send a 2 gig file as one gigantic 2 gig block of data, because the remote end is going to try and capture all of that data in one shot. So there may be some technical hurdles involved in that end, but it's not going to be insurmountable. But we don't want to do that every time. What we really want to do is be able to transmit these files to the server, run the build, then come over here, tweak a file here, tweak a file there, run the build again. We don't need to shuffle all those files. 99% of those files will not have changed. In fact, maybe you just want to do 2 back-to-back runs. No files have changed. It doesn't need to do anything. How are we going to support that? So here is the design for that, for better or worse. And we want to keep firmly in mind that as the Devember project, we're not writing production ready code, which is evidenced by the fact that our network code naively assumes that it reads 4 bytes and then allocates a buffer of that size and reads data into it. So all someone has to do is send us a message with the maximum 4 byte integer, and we're using ridiculous amounts of RAM. Clearly, there has to be more work done there. So this isn't production ready code. It's proof of concept learning code. We have it designed in our heads. We're going to try and implement it. We're going to see where it falls down, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and then we'll know how to iterate on it and go again. Now, of course, the other way to do this would be to sit and research everything ad nauseum before you start, but then you're not writing any code, and that's boring as all get out, so we probably don't want to do that, I would imagine. So here's the theory for how we're going to handle this. Here on the server end, when we start a build, we're going to gather this meta information for all of the files, like so. And this information has to be more than just the name of the file. We need to know where on our local system it was stored, which is this. And we're going to capture more information as well, in particular, the last modification time of the file, so that we'll be able to tell later if it changed, and a SHA-1 hash or some other kind of hash, but I'm assuming SHA-1 because it's what Git uses to identify the contents of files. I'm not sure how fast that is per se, but let's say we gather the list of files, we know when they were last modified, we capture a SHA-1 hash of those files. We take that blob of information and we have now a connection to the server. And the first thing we're going to have to do is talk to the server and say, hey server, give me the information that you have on the files in this particular project. And the server, because this is the first build, will say, I have no information. And our client says, okay, well, in that case, here's a file catalog, and it sends this metadata information across along with enough packets to eventually transmit all of the files to the other side. And we'll assume some level of resumability or something that's down the line. We really don't care. Now, on the server end, it has to have some sort of cache folder that it's using to store projects. And we're going to say that's configured by the user. It is influenced by several things. For example, every user should have their own special location in the cache directory. Every project that's being built should have its own special location for that user in the cache directory. Let's say also maybe the host name that we are connecting from to there is also captured in there, and or the operating system. The idea being that we might want to build the same project on the same remote server from different machines. And if they're different machines, we don't want these caches to the files to interact with each other. We want them to be distinct and separate because we might have a different version of the code on each one, right? Makes total sense. Now, the server is going to receive all of the data we give it and persist it to disk in a little binary file of some type. The server is the place where we're building. It's not the place where we're developing. So the server has the capability to be able to cache that. And then it runs the command and builds. Now, the client knows that its information is synced with the server because it sent that block of data. So the next time you do a build, it can zoop through the list of files again. This time, it's looking at modification times. And when it sees if a file has a different modification time, that's when it knows that there's something that file has changed since the last time that this was built, right? So it knows that file needs to be updated. Along the way, it might also discover files that exist now but didn't exist previously, in which case those are files that have to be sent to the server because they're new. And it might find that it used to know about a file that it now doesn't, in which case that file should be removed from the server because we do want to try to keep these somewhat synchronized between these two hosts, right? And then builds continue. Now, the client isn't going to, at least for right now, cache any of this information. It'll keep it in memory while Sublime is running, but when you quit and restart, it won't. So the first time that you build after you've restarted Sublime, it will have to scan the files and calculate their MD5 checksums. Then it talks to the server and it says, hey server, what information do you have about this project? And the server will say, I know this. And it just grabs the stored metadata from the last time and shuffles it across the network connection. We get it. We now know exactly what files and what state those files are in on the server. Compared to our own local copy, we'll know based on the SHA-1 hash of the local file and the remote file if any files need to change to bring us them up to date with us. We'll know if we need to add any files. We'll know if we need to delete any files. And we have the capability, of course, at any point to say, throw away every cached file you have. Let's start fresh and transmit more data. So that's ultimately what we are going for. And I know it spent a bit of time explaining how that works, but it's important for, part of my ear, the steps that we are about to take in this stream and possibly into the next stream, we'll see. Because we need this information in a different format. Now, I've got a format for that in mind, and I'm guessing that it should be, well, it's trivial for us in Python code to turn a dictionary into JSON. Presumably, one of the many libraries that's available on NuGet for C# is some sort of JSON parsing library, if it's not just something that's inherently part of the runtime because it's a very popular data format. So all we need is some variant of the message class that we already have that can just send an arbitrary freeform text, and we can send JSON data across no problem. And we'll have to come up with the file format. So we're not, for the actual files themselves, sending them chunked. So we're not too worried about that, but I'm thinking what we do want to do is turn this result from an array into actual files. Now, there are a couple of problems with how it's working right now. One of which is if we run this command in, I think I need to actually open a file. If we run this command in this directory, shoot, it's hard coded, is it not? Yeah, we need to fix that hard coding. 1 second. Let's go ahead and throw a none. And that, and comment that. Now, if we do it in this one, what do we see? But a single file entry that has the whole path. Now, that's not what we want. Remember, the output of this is supposed to be relative to some folder. So realistically, what we want is for, in this case, this to be the server folder and this to be the single file that's contained within it. So that's one thing we have to change, which is, or should be, I would imagine, fairly simplistic. I probably should not have done that per se, although it has been a bit since I quit. Now, unfortunately, I've lost the ability to undo that real quick like. Here's another issue that we might have with this. If I was to, well, I guess I don't really need to do that. If I was to do this and say that the path in the second one is home T Martin local source Devember 2017, and I don't need any includes or excludes there. Devember 2017, I rewrote the original version of HyperHelp to the version that was the basis of the one that I've been working on for the last year. So now note that the files that we have returned are all of the files from the first folder and a combination of all of the files from the second folder. Clearly, that should be a second list. So that is something that we need to work with. And here is one other. And for this, I again will comment out that and all of this so that it's working again just within the current project. Maybe I'll even do that in a way where I close that, or I guess I said none there, didn't I? And again, in that case, we end up with that. Now, what if we didn't have remote build server there? So we might say here, remote build server, which would remove the remote build server from the sidebar. But then, and I'm going to close that for this, we also had another folder entry, and here the path was /remote build server. Now there's two folders in here. There's this one and there's this one. This is actually contained in there, and I guess we also probably want to copy at least this from this one, right? Because we don't want that bin folder. It's ignored, and we don't want the debug folder. And those actually have some files. There's actually an execute or a DLL file in there, but it's a binary, so it's not seen. And similar for that. So let's say it actually looked like so. So now there's this. Now this is actually contained in here. It's just in two separate entries. If I run the command, we'll see in this particular case, it's not doing squat with that, which is sort of an intriguing thing on its own, come to think of it, because we know that it works when we do it manually, like so. But the other issue is there should be two paths there. There should be the top one and the other one. So we want to fix this bug I just found. And then in cases like this, where there's two folders, but one's actually inside the other, which you might do because if you try to exclude something, it might throw away more than you want, and then you can add it back again as a top level folder. Or imagine you had a top level project that had some library and then a sub projects folder and 4 different binaries that use that library. You might exclude those 4 projects and then add them as top level folders in the sidebar so you can manage them easier, but really they're all in on the same part in disk. We want to be able to handle that as well by merging things together. So that is the plan for what we're going to try to pull off here. Now, I made my console over here a titch big, so it's hiding stuff that I did not intend for it to hide. Now, the first thing we might want to note is, why does this, although it shows that, not give us remote build server information in here? Because it seems like it should. And well, maybe we'll even clear the console just to be sure. Oh, it's all unhappy now. There we go. So we go like so, and yeah, we're definitely not seeing that, but we are seeing one of these. So it's definitely calling files for folders twice. So let's go ahead and uncomment those. And we will again clear, because maybe there's an issue that has to do with the fact that I did that as // there. That it works here, but maybe it doesn't do what we expect at that part. So the top folder has no includes, it has those excludes, it's excluding those paths. And the second one, see, it is doing something dumb there in the folder calculation. This is something that Sublime handles. Although I gotta say, if that is the actual folder, which is the search path, which is the path as it arrived out, I guess this is going to take a little bit of looking, because it seems like home. Oh, hey, the T Martin is not in that one. That's intriguing. It went up 1 level because of the dot. All right. So I think we can probably figure that out before too long. This isn't actually something that I thought would need to be implemented. Now, this could probably be a little tighter, but we're not going to worry about that. What we are going to worry about is, have I finished all this coffee yet? Nope. But not to worry, I'm on it. Okay, so that's pruning. We don't care. Now here, the search path is just the path that you get. Then the includes and excludes, get those things. If there's not a search path, if the search path is not absolute, then if the project path is none, get mad. This is the part where it's going wrong. So before and search path. And then it'll say folders. And we'll see when we do it that before it was a dot and it became that. And before, this one was / remote build server. And then it ended up being that. So this code is wrong. Oh, and rel path stuff really gives me a headache. We might even do that just to shut it up and oh, do I need to return an empty list? I suppose I do. Okay. There we go. So we can clear that and easily just see the answers. And then we might even copy that and go here and change that to after. So we can see what it did before and what it did after. So, and let's also let's throw that in there too. It's nice to see that. Okay, so we'll clear that, and before it was a dot and it became the appropriate thing. Second, it was dot slash. Now I'm imagining rail path. Oh, let's look it up. It's probably in here. That's a little something I was looking up earlier. Rail path. Return a relative path, file path, to path either from the current directory or from an optional start directory. This is so I imagine the start directory that we provide maybe needs to be. Now, when I did this the other way, whoops, it didn't do what I expected, did it? Before was dot, and it ended up with home T Martin config Sublime Text 3 packages, which is not where this is. Well, actually, maybe it is where this is. Stored if I opened the package from that location. Maybe that was my problem. What's it called? Oh, whoops. I need this one. Does this not do what I think it does? Thank you. Oh, it's got an underscore in it. Really? It doesn't? What did I just look up? It's going to be one of those days. I keep hitting the wrong key, opening the command palette. It's over there. Window.project file name. Oh, what the heck am I typing? Oh, package file name, idiot. Project file name. I did not load this from, that's the name of the project file. So if I said project path, I'll say ppath actually, because that'll look nicer. What do we see? It knows the correct project path. So why does, oh, maybe I need, let's test this first, because maybe that is the issue. We end up with that stupidity. Okay, I think we need to write all of the stuff here so we can work this out. Search path is search path. That's easy. And project path is project path. Oops. That's easy. We're going to comment out those. So if it started with dot slash and the project path is that, then for some reason saying that the relative path to search path from project path goes down 1, 2, 3 to my home directory and into the packages folder. Why would it do that? I am clearly misunderstanding what railpath does. Or from an optional start directory. Start defaults to os.curder. Do I have to say, I I'm using os.path.railpath. Do I have to name it start? Does it not know? I find that hard to believe. No. What the hell am I missing here? I think this is why I had it the other way, right? Find the project path relative to the search path. And then if the search path is dot and the project path is that, it still ends up, now it's dot, 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 local. I do not comprehend what the serious hell this thing is doing. Let's go ahead and do this. Work is equal to that, let's say. I'm going to put it here. No, we'll leave it there. Then we can print, then we can print work is this. I apologize for all of the people that are very familiar with how path things work and who understand what idiotic mistake I am making here, because I am reading that as find the relative either to the current directory or some path that you provide. And the some path that I was providing in the first case was from some path. I would imagine that if you had a path and you said, what's the dot? It would say, it's that path. So I don't understand why that is the way that it is. And then we might also say print final, and we might say os, oops, that's one too many, os.path.abs path to find the absolute path of work. So we got an extra work in here that we don't want. But the result is that. So when it's dot in the project path, the final ends up being the project path. Here, it still goes up one level. Should I join them together? os.path.abs path of home tmartin dot local. So maybe I don't want rel path here at all. Oh, sorry. Search path should actually have been, yeah, abs path work, right? Maybe I want to join. That does not make a hell of a lot of sense. Let's just read that one more time. Return a relative file path to path from the start directory. All right. I guess that 2 bit in there is the dense part. That's all I got to say about that. So that seems to do what we want. So if that's the case, this is the part that we actually care about. And if we were to revert that to make those a comment and revert, oh, got to save it. Yeah, okay. GitGetter gets a little confused sometimes. And if I was to revert that, and instead of rel path, it was this, and I'm going to just paste it, which has the nice benefit of it being smaller. When I run it, now do we get what we would expect? No. Is this because I didn't I, this is this point at which maybe no one's interested in working on. Home T Martin local source Devember 2018 remote build server. How does that not find any files? Oh, sorry, that's that one. I'm not gonna lie, that's somewhat confusing. Let's go ahead and clear this again. So with this information, we know that if the folder, which is the thing that it's actually going to search in, is Home T Martin local source Devember 2018, which is what this path is here. And it's not going to include any files, but it's going to exclude all of those. And it doesn't not going to include any files, but it's going to exclude stuff. Then for some reason, it decides that the number of results that it should return is none. Maybe. And maybe the issue is that it's joining them first. Oh, there they are. Okay. Sheesh. So, okay, now it's doing what we would expect. And it's actually kind of doing, if you will, it's sort of the right thing. Not really. These files should actually be stored in remote build server. But at least it's doing what we would expect, except for that line being wrong. So again, we'll do that. And yeah, oh, I should probably have commented that out while I was doing it, so we don't see that part. So let's clear the console. Always make sure you're at the bottom. Maybe that's what I was doing. There is the CS type stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and I got to be in one of these files over here in order. Sublime has forgotten that I am in a Git repository. That's interesting. Wow, that one's not a Git file, is it? Okay, there we go. Am I two ahead? Oh, two unstaged files. Okay. What are my unstaged files? I'm going to leave the project alone. And I'm going to actually just stage these lines here. So we'll stage this hunk so that we can say fix an issue in file gathering with respect to path search. It turns out that I was using os.path.relpath to calculate a relative path in an incorrect way because that tries to find a path to another path and not from another path, which is what I was expecting. Because I apparently can't read. If we expect a path to be relative to another path, we can join them together and use abspath to make the path canonical. Okay, there's only one end in that. All right, and we're going to go ahead and commit that. Now, let's say we want to work this in stages. That's our little build file, which for some reason, even though it's inside that folder, doesn't count as a Git file because there's no thing there. But for the project, it does count, and here it doesn't. That's interesting. I don't often use multiple, or I haven't often used multiple folders in a case where there was some stuff there. I think I can still do this because I have my own plugin that does it, that supersedes the functionality built into Sublime. So that's good to know, although it ends up in a different directory. Um, but in any case, we're going to come back to in local source. Yeah. Do I have two copies of that again for some reason? Something is doing that in a way that I don't understand either, but nevertheless. So this is finding stuff from the project, right? Okay, and there's all the stuff. So the first thing that I think we want to do is have this return a dictionary. And here we'll say results name is equal to true and return results. I don't know if you can extend a dictionary, but maybe you can. It would be nice if you could. Let's see, we are calling files for folder, which is called here. So this needs to also be a dictionary. Dict has no attribute extend. Let's see. If I go over here to this window and type Python add keys from one dictionary to another, it auto-completes because apparently I've done that more than once. Python extend for a dictionary. It's marked as a duplicate. Update, not extend. And now the result is a dictionary where all of the file names are there. I think as they used to be. Now they're in a different order because the dictionary keys pose their own order. The values are true, and we got a little of that action. That's the remote build server, CS prods. There's the messages thing. So all the files are together, but they're in a dictionary, which is nice, let's say. Now, what we might return here, search path is the place we're searching. So we might return search path, then results, so that this gets first the path that contains the contents of the file, and then the content, or sorry, a path that contains files, and then a dictionary that contains the contents for that file. And then we wouldn't say this. We might say base and files. Oh, that's the wrong one. We want this one. Base and, oh, not files. Base folder and folder files is equal to files for folder window folder path. And is that extended too far? No, it's not. We'll do that for the time being. So now we do that, and then we say files base folder is equal to folder files, and remove that. And now, oh, whoops. There needs to be an underscore there. Now we end up with a dictionary where that is the base, and this is all the files in the base. So now we've gotten it to a point where we can actually see that there are two separate folders. That is nice. That's part of what we want to do. Now, the next thing is we want something that's not just true here. And when we say results name is true, that's what we get. So we do need a full path name for something. Um, so we might say there's keep, there's prune. Let's say get file details, root path, file name, and that's all we'll do for now. And then we can say name is equal to os.path.join root path and file name. And we come back to what I was doing before, which is figuring out, I think it was os path mtime. Get mtime. Os path get mtime. Okay. Try. No, not C#. Not yet. mtime equals os.path.get mtime name. And then we might say return, and the dictionary we're going to return has a key. I'll probably have to do that if I'm with guess. The name of this file is the file name, and the last m modified would be mtime, and we might say SHA1 is none. We're going to return that, and we're going to catch. No, we're going to accept. Does not exist or is inaccessible. OS error. Return none. And here we might say get all of the underlying file details for the provided file in the given root path. Now we're saving the name of the file here. What did I call this? Get file details. Maybe I'll copy that whole line. In the place where we're doing that, we might say instead results name is equal to get file details in the root search path for the file named name. And now it's way out there and pretty printing it in a dumb fashion. May want to tweak that just to make it not quite so terrible. But what's the point of this? So that if we have one of these dictionaries, we will immediately know what the name of the entry was along with the last modification time and the digest hash. So that you could pass this around. It's not technically needed, and we could at any point decide we don't want that and remove it and just have this information. But we're getting the time of when something was last modified, and so that later on we can compare to see if they're the same, and if they're not, we know we need to do something special with that file. That I think might bother me per se, but first let's see about calculating the the hash, and I think there's an MD5 in here if I remember searching. Hash lib, that sounds like the right thing. Why is that? Look like a male. I'm going to search for hash lib instead. Oh, let's refer to the see also section at the end and see how the collisions are. Do-do. Oh, that's pretty complicated. Okay, so how do we work this bad boy? One constructor for each type of hash. Feed this object a bytes-like object using update. Okay, at any point you can ask it. So far, uh, feeding string objects into update isn't supported. Okay, that's good. I don't want to do that anyway. Constructors for hash algorithms that are always present are MD5 SHA-1, SHA-224, blah, blah. For example, so you can, okay. Generally, you do something like this and you can either specify the text or you can do iterative update stuff, which I think is what we want to do here because we're going to need to read the contents of the file and hash it. And the last thing you want to do is just naively do like a read operation that reads, I think by default in Python, the read would like read the entire contents of the file into memory. And if you tried to hash a 2 gig file, you'd blow 2 gigs of memory out your butt. And that's not a particularly good idea. So import hash lib, create one, call update, then call digest, but that doesn't look like the format one would want. Oh, hex digest. Looks like it probably does something. Da, 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 da. The hash size in bytes. Okay, update the hash with the object, which must be interpreted as buffer of bytes. Repeated calls are equivalent to a single call with a concatenation of all the arguments. So, okay, so I imagine in that case, what we might do is, let's see, first we need to import hash lib. So we get the hash lib. And then in this thing, we might say SHA-1 is equal to, what did it say? Hashlib dot SHA-1. Is that one of the ones that it said? It was, wasn't it? I think so. Oops. So it's that. That's going to create the, well, maybe we'll do that. We're going to create the hash thus, and then we need to read, how do you open a file? Well, I always forget how to, codecs open? No, they're just open, I think it's open a file and return a corresponding file object. If it can't be opened, OS error is raised. Okay, file is either a string or bytes. I suppose we want the mode to be binary because we don't want to interpret line feeds when we're calculating stuff. That's probably not good. Files open in binary, return contents as bytes. Oh, that's handy. We totally need a bytes object. Okay. So that's probably cool. Now, if I would remember correctly, I think we want something like with open name, read binary as file so that it automatically closes the file. And then we have to read the data. Is the read function in here? Normally just da, 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 da. It returns a file object. Let's see what a file object has to do. Their interfaces are defined in the I/O module. Oh, all right, couldn't just tell me, huh? Text I/O, binary I/O. Okay. The binary stream. Buffered I/O base. Really? Boy, this is starting to get complicated. Read and return up to n bytes. If it's omitted, data is read and returned until end of file. All right, empty bytes is returned if the stream is already at. end of file. The argument is positive. Okay, so we're going to need some amount of stuff. So I guess what's the best way to do that? While true, data is equal to file.read, say 256K. Oops. 262.144. Read the data, and then I guess that I think A equals bytes, right? So let's see. And B is equal to bytes 1. Then if I said A, and I said B, and I said true if A, else false, then A, that one is false, but here it's true. So that means that the bytes is empty. So if not data, I guess, would be the thing to do there. And then otherwise we would say MD, no, it's a SHA-1. SHA-1 dot update, I think it said, pass it the data. Yeah. So that, I imagine, would open the file. It would, while it's true, try to read 256K. If we didn't get any data, break. Otherwise, update the hash, then do that. So if we get here, and we would say, is it hex digest, I think? That seems common in things like this that I've done before. So that's doing something. I guess it behooves us to SHA-1 the .getignore file. Oh, I don't have one of those? Oh, is it SHA-1 sum? All right. Yeah, that's right. I would do MD5 sum, wouldn't I? Yeah. Okay. I don't do that very often. Is that what I got for this thing? Hey, I should have for getignore, copy that. We'll just go ahead and paste it there, and then do this C8A9 CE10A. Yeah, it totally is. Boss. All right, we're calculating MD5 checksums for things. I imagine this MTime said that it would throw an OS error if there was some problem. So maybe we want to do that first, like it's doing here. Because if there's any problems with permissions or anything, then we can bail out of trying to do anything with the hash or even trying to open it. So, I don't know that that's actually an interesting thing, but nevertheless. So that's doing something. Now I think is this a thing? No. I can never remember how this module works. Dumps. Dump string. Okay. And I think there's some sort of, certainly there was a sort keys in use there. Sure ASCII, check circular, allow NAND class. Indent. Aha, yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess I need an object that's more interesting than that. Oh, I guess I don't want to dump it as a string, do I? I want to... Crap. I think I had the wrong idea there. Krang. Well, actually, it's got the new lines in it, doesn't it? So if I printed it, I guess that actually would have done what I wanted. Yeah, like that. Maybe we'll use that instead of pprint for the next little bit here. If I come down to this, maybe I might say dump files and comment that out. So, ooh, that made it angry. Or it did nothing. Oh, right. What did I just say, stupid? Gotta print it. Yeah, look at that. That's way nicer to look at for debugging purposes. It hardly makes you want to punch yourself in the face at all. I think there was a sort keys thing in there too, wasn't there? Maybe we turn that on. Is that it? No, that didn't throw an error. Remote build server has the build client extensions and main and the stuff in messages. I don't know if the microphone is picking it up or not, but my dog is snoring something fierce down there. So that's cool. I think maybe we'll leave that there. We'll go ahead and for our own purposes, because these are both for debug purposes, we'll do that and then come down here and remove that one. Yeah. We'll put that there in place of doing this instead. And I would imagine you can JSON's dump a list, right? I can't imagine why not. Oops. There. Whoops. Lists are possible as JSON, so maybe we might start this off with file gather by, you know, does this do anything now? Because it's this, oh, I guess that's just, it's only doing that there. It's not doing it here. All right, so maybe that's cool. We'll put that back the way it was. It's the one thing I don't like about this particular format, but maybe it's easier to grok. We're gonna need, well, I guess we'll do that and stage those lines and leave hashlib out of this commit. And we'll leave out that and all of that stuff. And we will stage these, let's say. So if we look at what's staged, we're importing JSON, and instead of doing that, we're now doing this, and then we can say how many times am I going to do that? Swap to using JSON printing instead of pprint. The thought occurs that maybe I should have checked out pprint to see if it can do this. Maybe before I hit the old shebang, I'll give that a go. Indent is 1. If stream is none, okay, this may be. Indent, width, and depth will be passed to the pretty printer constructor. Indent, width, depth. Okay. Keywords are indent, depth, and width. The amount of indentation added for each recursive level. Okay, the default is 1. Yeah, well, the indent was ridiculous. The number of levels which may be printed is controlled by depth. Okay, the default, there's no constraint, so that wasn't the case. And if it can't be constrained to fit in 80 characters. Kind of sounds like my upstairs neighbor is doing something. I'm going to stick with this as a commit. The next thing that we might include is this bit here, which is, I imagine, that whole hunk. Yeah, so we can just stage that hunk. And let's also stage this hunk so as to say implement a method to get file details. This takes a root path and the name of a file in that path and returns back an object that gives you the local name of the file, the last modification time, and the SHA-1 hash of the contents of that file. This is to be used in a future commit to store information about this file and its contents for sharing with the server. And away we go. We're going to leave that alone again. And now this is the part where instead of a dictionary, we return instead of a list, we return a dictionary. Instead of appending, we get file details, and we return the base path and then the results. And here we need that. Instead of that, we don't extend, we store, and that's all we need. So if we stage that hunk and we stage this hunk, and that's the Devember project, we don't want to keep that, so we might then say alter, oops, files for folders and friends. Previously, these functions just returned a list of all files that exist in the paths that are included. Now the inner functions return a dictionary of file details for each file and an overall key that specifies the root path that those files are stored in. Okay, now we're going to leave that. Now there was one other thing we wanted to fix there, and that is the case where that's checked in, so that's good, where one might do this. So essentially, there are no folders at all. Not the ones we're passing is empty, so it's going to use those. There's nothing, so now it's mad because of this code here. This is what happens is if there's not any folders, we get the file name of the active view, and we used to just stick its full name in, but now that's not going to work. We need to say, well, we'll even say base folder. No, we'll say, yeah, base folder, base path, and file name is equal to os.path.split view file name. And then we have to say files base path. Well, we might even say base folder there. Yeah, that looks nicer. Is equal to get file details for the base folder and the file name instead of appending. So in this case, when we do it, we end up with a dictionary whose only top level key is the current folder, and we get the SHA sum and the last modified time of the single file. So that is all we need for that little bit of business. So we'll stage that as well. How are we doing on time? We are pretty close to running out of time here. Now, technically, I think I've been going for longer than an hour, but I did spend some of that time explaining how things are going to work. So that's kind of outside of the thing, not the rules of Devember, but the spirit of Devember, if you will. Only so much because it's time spent working on code, including research, and I did spend the better part of an hour and a half thinking through and designing this in my head, so I kind of did it. Nevertheless, stealthy drinking of coffee notwithstanding, we're going to leave that alone. That's the staged files and say handle the case, add new handling to the case of a single file. Now, in the case where there are no folders, the only thing we transmit back and forth is a single file. In that case, we need to modify the existing code because it was just adding the file name to the list, but now it needs to split the file name into a base path and a file, and it needs to get file details for that file. Okay. There's something else that I am thinking of that I forgot. Oh, yeah, okay. Before we call this a thing, if you will, note, oh, yeah, there's There's only one of those. It's just sort of conglomerating them together now because there's no separator. This is what we would do the very first time we start. We scan through, we find all of the files, we figure out their last modification time, we store their name, and we grab the SHA-1 hash because we need to know a starting point so that when the server transmits its information to us, we can say, okay, well, modification time, I should point out, is only for our own local use. The server isn't gonna transmit that, or it's gonna ignore what we send it because there could be clock skew between us and them. And we could get around that at, to some degree, but I'm gonna say easier to just say the server knows what the hash of the file it got was, because when we sent it, we told it this was the hash. It doesn't even need to calculate it itself. Although we could make the server have some sort of redundancy check or a command you could give it that would make it calculate that. When it transmits its information back and we already have one that we started with, we can see if the file has changed or not. If we then decide to send the file to them, we update our copy so we know what the SHA-1 hash is, and we're good. Um, We want to do that, update the hash when the last modified time is different during the same run, because that means we or someone else updated files in the file system and we need to make sure the server sees those. But I'm guessing by and large, most of the files won't change. And in that case, their last modified time will remain the same. And if that's the case, we don't have to compare any SHA hashes because the file hasn't changed, or at least we think it hasn't changed. Again, there could be an option to set that. So sometimes we want to be able to do this without the overhead of calculating the SHA-1 hash, or if you will, we know that this calculation isn't a zero-sum time, and why waste CPU calculating information you're not going to use? And the entirety of this is in find project folders. So I'm going to say that we might also add here hash files equals true, let's say. And then we would also pass hash files to get file details like so. And then we would say if hash file that, and we might even end it with SHA-1 is equal to SHA-1.hex digest. And we might also just say SHA-1 is equal to none here. And then we take that off. So this function now takes an argument that tells it if it should hash or not. It defaults to no, but if it was told to hash, it creates an object, it hashes it, and then it sets that value. So I think just the way it is, oh, it auto-completed, not quite the one that I wanted. So now it's doing that. It's doing what it used to do. But if I said down here, hash files equals false, then it should still work, but we end up with a null in the JSON or a none in the dictionary, just so that we know. So that is also a thing that we wanted to have happen. So we're going to stage that. And this is why we did it in this order, because I figured it was going to be pretty easy to pull that off. Stage that. We add the now it's going to default to true, so you have to go out of your way to do something. We are going to pass it here, and we're going to look at this again in just a second. And I'm going to say we're going to discard this hunk because we know that that works. We don't want it to do that by default for our command while we're testing. We don't want that to happen. So this function got an argument, and now Instead of doing that, it defaults to none, and instead of just calculating it, it only calculates it if it got hash, and then here it just uses the key because that gets the hex digest. Find project files takes an argument called hash files that defaults to true, and it passes it to get file details, which sadly is over the 80 character limit, but I'm not caring enough of that. So let's say make SHA-1 hashing optional for optimization reasons. Um, Although when we first fetch a list of file details, we definitely want to get the SHA-1 contents hash of all of the build files. At the same time, we also want to get file lists later and only calculate the hash when we know they're probably different as determined by their last modification time. This adds the appropriate arguments with the appropriate Boolean default values to allow this to calculate hashes by default, but also not calculate them when needed, which is a nice time optimization. Another way we could do that is to also pass an argument for what used to be in this thing so that it can figure that out by looking at its own data or some such. Now, I'm thinking we're gonna want to bring this back for the last bit because what now? Oh, shoot. I did not pass it in the simple case. We'll have to go back and amend that. Files, oh, right, because it used to, it normally, if view file name is not, oh, I only did it for one instead of for all of them. Whoops, that's my bad. I did not test that thoroughly enough. Hash files, when we call files for folders, and then we hash files there, and then we hash files here. So now it does that. And if we came down here and said hash files equals false, then we get nulls for everywhere. All right, no, that's my bad. I got a little ahead of myself there. That needs to have it, and that needs to pass it, and that needs to pass it. That part can stay and amend the previous commit. So we're all good on that. Now here we're back to this, and we're gonna, yeah, we'll set that to true, but we'll leave it there. So we still get all of the action there, and we might actually also do a little bit of this. So when we do it multiple times, we can see the split when we go back up, theoretically. The lines are all really long now. Did that not, oh, maybe I didn't do that. Oh, that's right. There's two folders now. Okay, so it's a lot longer than I expected it to be. Whoa, what the hell are we doing here, guys? Oh, that's right. That thing points at, it doesn't point at what I thought it points at. Haha, I thought I was doing it based on the project. All right, so there probably way back here actually is one. I I was thinking that it was doing it the same as the this thing. So yeah, actually we don't want to do that. We wanted we want to let's revert that this part back. Let's revert this part back. Oh, actually, but we probably want none. Let's say so that when we do it, we get our local build system again. Alrighty, because there's a little something to do here, and we may run out of time here. I'm not entirely sure what the best way to do this is. We might actually do this in a separate thing, or maybe we leave this for another day, i.e., tomorrow. Because remember, there are two top level keys here now. This one, and well, actually, let's go ahead and say print files.keys, let's say. So when we do it, there's two keys here. There's this path and there's this path. Let's turn off word wrap there. So that's a little nicer to look at. Um, Realistically, this is a subchild of this, or if you will, this one starts with this. They have the same common prefix. And if that's the case that's the case here, so whatever we put into this dictionary can be added to this dictionary by modifying the entries so that their name has this in front of it. So if you will, all of these things are the remote build server. They're in that path. And then this is build client.cs, and that's the name there. If this part was cut from here and pasted here and here and here and here, so on, then this directory would be the same as the parent one, which in this case it is because they share the same stuff. And all of these entries could be pulled out of here and updated into this one. And then there looks like there's only one folder, and we've essentially undone the way we split the sidebar into two and put them back into one folder again. But we need to be able to do that in a safe way. And I think the way we want to do that is to sort things by shortest path. And then as we go through, if we sort them according to path, then they would come out in this order: first the base and then this one. And when we do this one, we could say, hey, does the one that comes before us or any of the ones that come before us start with exactly, do we start with exactly their whole text plus a little bit more? If so, take the little bit more and add it to all of our names and stick us into them and throw this key away. That is what we are going to work on tomorrow. For tonight, we are going to call it quits on Devember day 15. But this was some pretty good strides. We're pretty close to the data structure that we want to use. Now we have information here that we can use on our end to be able to talk to the remote server and send it files so that it can actually start doing the build. And that means once we work out that one last bit, which, let's be honest, doesn't actually need to be done for this. I could just as easily put this project back into the state that it was in originally and just assume that it'll be good and consider this an optimization for future. This is just something that I want to do now, realistically. Because it seems like it would be a handy thing to do, and I want to consider it this way. it seems like something that we can do, and I'd like to do it to know that I can do it, so that we don't go too far down the line and realize we've made a mistake in our data structure. So once this part is done, then we can actually start in on trying to define the protocol, so that when we talk to the server, instead of just echoing messages back, it actually holds some sort of meaningful conversation with us, which means we have to get back into C# code, which is kind of scary. But this is the joy of programming. At every moment, I'm either super excited about continuing on the task, or I'm desperately looking to want to go over to a different monitor and go into the Sublime forum and answer people's questions, or just play something like Styx Shards of Darkness or something. Because anytime you're doing that, you're not thinking about fixing horrible problems, but you're also not engaging your mind. So let us say good night and have a good evening. And I would also say have a sublime day.